Hello, is government hearing complete?
Here na po. Sorry for that.
All right, is up hearing complete? Is up hearing complete? Can I get any audio confirmation?
Up here is incomplete.
Right. Hello, I am Marco. I'll be your chair for this round. I'm going to let the panels introduce themselves, and it will serve as attendance as well. I'll start with JP and then Olive.
Hi everyone. Hello. Hi everyone. My name is JP Brosa, one of the panelists for this Novice quarterfinals. Congrats on making it this far. Congrats for breaking. Let's have a great round, guys. Enjoy.
Hello everyone, I'm Olive, and congratulations on everyone for reaching novice quarters, and good luck on the round today.
All right. So given the government has vetoed motion 2 and the opposition has vetoed motion 3, debating on the motion, this House, as a terrorist organization, would prioritize complex coordinated attacks over war of attrition tactics, calling upon the Prime Minister here.
Am I clear and audible po ba?
Yes.
Okay, I'll be starting my speech. In my first word, if you want people to see you, you should become something that is so big that no one can defy you anymore. In this speech, I will first define what is the things that should be characterized in this debate. Secondly, I will give the policy of the government. And thirdly, I will give you reasons why it is better than a war attrition attack at the end of the day. First, let us define what a terrorist organization looks like. A terrorist organization is an organized organization that shares a radical beliefs within their system. It is they are groups that uses violence, that uses warfare as a form of extreme protest for people to understand what they are trying to push. This looks like ISIS using violence because they reject the status quo beliefs. They reject the capitalism that is eroding the world as of they think of, and they want an alternative power for them to do so in the future. And let us and we should understand where this terrorist organization get their finance or get their resources like guns or military forces or anything that is being used inside the terrorist organization. They get this in three ways. They get this by selling commodities, by selling children, for example, or prostitute or illegal substance, or anything that can get them big money immediately. They also get this by organized robberies. This looks like them robbing a shipping vessel, for example, that just went to the port so that they can sell the goods or at least use the goods themselves. And lastly, they get this getting by by from rich people that shares their beliefs or shares the same enemy as them, because as we already know, rich people has a lot of resources but also has a lot of enemies, so that they are incentivized to fund this organization terrorist groups and organizations for them to actually get resources. So with this in mind, our counter policy then is that the terrorist organization should prioritize or complex organized attacks insofar as they would use it as the biggest considerations when they are trying to plan an attack for a region or for anything, for example. So this means that we're not trying to remove the war of attrition in the first place. So if they think that is the best way for them to do these kinds of attacks, then this is allowed. But most of all, it is a priority that they would plan out their attacks and make it as big as possible for them to actually create better results. in our first argument, then, we believe that complex coordinated attacks helps the leaders of terrorist organizations to actually give better results for the organizations. Three reasons. It is three reasons. It is a better or at least a resource efficient way of doing attacks because yes, these kinds of attacks might take a lot of might take high amounts of resources because it is a large scale attack. But what we're talking about, it will better preserve and sustain the people within the organization at the end of the day, because we should understand that these attacks are coordinated and strategic. So this means that they are trying their best to lessen their casualties while killing more people on their enemies. So this means that yes, even if it will take bigger resources, but as we already stated that these resources that
Yo,
terrorist organizations can actually get bigger resource in a get-go because they can just rob a shipping vessel, for example. So this is much more sustainable for them compared to if you do a war of attrition where they need to constantly pull out a lot of resources, or at least some amount of resources in a long run. This is much less sustainable because there's less things for them to rob, because not every day a shipping vessel can be robbed by them, etc. Secondly, it rises the moral of the people because we need to understand that once people understand that you have a coordinated attack or at least a planned out attack for a long run, for one thing, you people would see this as a form of success because once you do this every time, then they would think that I joined the right organization because it produces results immediately. And thirdly, it creates immediate results for people to actually see terrorist organizations. Because why is immediate results important? Because immediate results create so that you create the fear and create the change that the terrorist organizations want. This looks like people still remembering 9/11 instead of people remembering how not but people don't remember how people in Colombia are always attacking, or at least always attacking these groups to try and exhaust them.
POI.
This is very important. No, this is very impactful because you create more engaged members, because now people are most likely want to do your strategy compared to if it's just war of attrition. Then in my next segment, I will prove our to failure for terrorist organizations. Three reasons. It creates predictability for these terrorist organizations that can lead to death of their leaders. Because we have to understand that terrorist organizations have a very strong hierarchy system. So once you create predictability within your attacks, other countries most likely want to can actually do complex coordinated attacks on you in return, because now they understand that what you're doing is just repeatable, or at least it's just is just a sustained attack without really intending to kill our biggest leader, for example. So this repetitiveness and this predictability, you risk the safety of your biggest leaders. For example, how Osama bin Laden was killed because of the predictability of ISIS, because they were becoming stagnant, for example. And with that, I am proud to propose.
Right, thank you for that speech, Prime Minister. Just a quick reminder that POIs are not mandatory, but they are highly encouraged. And to please time yourselves and please take note of the time of speeches. The POIs are going to be taken within the first and sixth minute of the speech. With all of that being said, thank you for the speech of Prime Minister, and to open the case coming from opposition bench, calling upon the leader of opposition. Here.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes.
Okay, give me a moment to just fix up my stuff. And yeah, let's get this going, right? Setting my timer. Okay. I'm gonna start my speech. Three, two, one. People. Government tells us that if you want someone to see you, you should become so big that they can't ignore you anymore. But in this debate, being impossible to ignore doesn't make you powerful. It makes you the easiest target in the world, right? Government's arguments collapse on three fronts. It's so logically inconsistent, it's so strategically irrational, and they're not even recognizing the actors' incentives in the first place, right? Gov says that coordinated attacks are resource efficient, but they also claim it to be resource intensive. They say that they can just get more resources by robbing ships. And internally this is so contradictory, telling us that two claims cannot both be true, right? Because coordinated attacks will require trained operatives, coordination networks, and a really good infrastructure, all which increase operational exposure and attrition strategies. Mind you, our strategy maximizes that resource efficiency to hell and high water. I'm telling you that right now. Government spends everything on one spectacular moment, but we invest our entire resource into surviving this entire war. Imagine a leader of an insurgent organization, you are hunted by powerful governments, resources limited. Your enemies possess surveillance systems, intelligence agencies, and militaries far stronger than anything that you can muster. In this world, your greatest asset is not strength, it is survival. If you launch a massive coordinated attack, world leaders immediately put your organization under a spotlight. Your name appears in global headlines. Intelligence agencies begin tracking every financial transaction, and suddenly, the most powerful states on this world unite against you. But instead, if you wage a slow war of attrition, persistent, gradual, strategic, you will remain difficult to eliminate. You survive long enough to build those networks, and the opposition believes that if a survival and influence are the goals, longevity is far more valuable than spectacle. We analyze this motion in the context that modern counterterrorism environments, where governments operate internationally to eliminate organizations responsible for attacks. And because of this, insurgent organization groups will attract global attention either way, right? So let's set up some safety nets, right? Opposition does not eliminate coordinated attacks entirely. I think we both agree on that, right? But they still occur within specific circumstances, you know? But they will not be the strategic focus, which means we can still have our own coordinated attacks. We can make those big spectacles, but in timing. This is an actor motion, meaning the debate values what strategy best serves the interest of the organization itself, not morality, survival. It's influence and longevity, right? So let's start with the arguments. Large coordinated attacks attract overwhelming global retaliation. As prioritizing these coordinated attacks invite the full attention and retaliation of so many powerful states, as these attacks produce massive international attention and force governments to respond aggressively, right? By making these attacks, these large events, you're creating immediacy. You're calling to action. Once an organization becomes the focus of global outrage, states coordinate intelligence operations and financial monitoring, like I said. And these, for a small or even a big organization, provoking this level of retaliation creates enormous strategic risk. And the impact here is that the organization increases the probability that it will be dismantled before it even achieves any long-term goals it wants to set. And it allows, and here's the thing, if we focus more on attrition, right, you're gonna enable long-term survival chances. War of attrition enables weaker actors to outlast all of their stronger opponents. As states often possess these vast resources, sustained pressure over long periods will erode the public morale and drain state resources. Right? So this works on both fronts. Because firstly, if you're able to erode public morale, it'll be easier for you to even get the people to your side. It'll be a lot easier for you to rouse the public to your side. It'll be a lot easier for you to dismantle the government, to dismantle the opposition. And attrition allows organizations to adapt, reorganize, and continue operating over time rather than risking their destruction in high profile operations. right? And survival becomes the decisive advantage here. And the third one, which I think is really important here, avoiding large attacks will often preserve the geopolitical opportunities. When an organization conducts large attacks that capture global attention, nearly every incentive that arises is for the global community to cooperate in eliminating it. However, if you operate below that threshold, you can exploit geopolitical rivalries. And that's a very important thing because some powerful actors may begin quietly tolerating you because they can benefit from the groups that you weaken through your actions. Attrition tactics give the organization strategic flexibility, and prioritizing spectacular attacks destroy those opportunities, turning the entire international system against it. Right? So we operate under a couple of mechanisms here. The organization, we're prioritizing sustained smaller scale operations without pressure. By avoiding these globally shocking attacks, the organization reduces the likelihood of unified international efforts. And third, the group preserves its networks, maintains its influence, and overall becomes a lot more effective. And even if the government proves that coordinated attacks create greater fear and media attention, our side still wins because attention also brings overwhelming retaliation that threatens the organization. And our model is better because it prioritizes longevity. And on a strategic level, insurgent movements rarely succeed through these single dramatic attacks. They succeed through long term endurance and patience. In a long term asymmetric conflict, endurance often determines the outcome. For these reasons, our definitions, arguments, mechanisms, comparatives, the macro analysis that I was literally giving you, and we strongly oppose prioritizing coordinated attacks, and we, opposition, are clearly on the winning side. We support a strategy built on endurance and patience and prioritizing the best interest of the actor. Therefore, we urge you, stand with opposition. Thank you.
Thank you for that speech, Leader of Opposition, and we'll continue upon the case of government bench, calling upon the Deputy Prime Minister. Here, here.
Um, Government Deputy Prime Minister, here. My name is Rain, pronouns he, him. Um, I will be starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. As an outside observer, it is not the slow burns that I remember, but the big bangs. First, I would like to provide some call outs to opposition. They say that being possible to ignore makes you that a much bigger of a target, that you need to prioritize survival over strength. But we have to consider here, what is the best interest? Why do terrorist organizations exist in the first place? They exist because they're there as a protest of change. So this attention is actually good on our side because we can make people we can make no, this is what happens essentially. People will look at the government attacking us, and the government will take accountability for, yeah, we killed them, and they'll take the blame for this quote unquote destroying us, and that will just radicalize our supporters even further. It will not demoralize them, but it will like strengthen their resolve. And so essentially the best interest of an organization here is to make a statement and then finally bounce. It's not to survive, it's not to like prolong their longevity. As a terrorist organization, this is an actor motion, mind you. I want to show the world that I'm tough. I'm strong, and whoever messes with me, they will face my wrath. So, on to my extensions then. On Oh, yeah, we still need to survive. We still need to survive. Sorry, we still need to survive. But like, you know, our priority is to make a statement. Yeah, I should have nuanced that. My bad. But anyway, onto my extensions then. My extensions are essentially this. It's about the supporters or the grunts within the organization. So, what do I mean by this? I mean that, the supporters and the grunts within this organization, they'll be far better utilized. Why is this the case? Well, for starters, the supporters are more likely to stay in this organization. Why? Because the attacks that they had invested in have caused significant casualties in given areas. So what does this look like? This looks like Al Qaeda invading multiple countries at the same time, right? What happens here? It boosts morale and faith among these supporters in the organization, which you don't have in opposition, because a war of attrition is slow. How is this going to boost morale? That's the question I pose to opposition. Secondly, um, there was a claim made by opposition that that we I know that like there's a contradiction on our side, because like again like we don't uh we use resources intensively, but we say that we'll use it efficiently. I'm going to elaborate on that right now. They will use their resources efficiently because here's the thing. Terrorist organizations, they're not no they're not like they're not brutes. Okay, they're not brutes in the sense that they'll just go charging in there and and going going to charge in there and have no tactics at all. They will have tactics. That's the point of an organization. So because of that, they will have to use their resources efficiently. What this looks like is a mix of manpower and weapons. They're not going to expend all of their resources. That would just be stupid, right? So essentially they will still have some resources on their side. It's just they're going to use their resources significantly, in the sense that it makes a statement. And that again is the primary purpose of a military of a terrorist organization. So it will still have people within the organization and equipment, so they can still continue further their goals. They still survive. But again, why is this better on our side? This is better on our side because again, in op you have less time to prepare people, because like on our side, essentially what happens is people
POI.
no, people are more specialized. There are more specialized forces. Like they will utilize mercenaries. So there will be like infantry. There will be like support teams. There will be like espionage teams. So like essentially, what happens is you have more specialized people, right? So like you have more time to what happens here is that you use your resources extensively to train these people. So what happens is in op is that they have less time to train people because they're focusing on this war of attrition. So the people they expend on these war fronts, they're more likely to die. And why is this important? Because of course death isn't good for the org. And well, you have to keep in mind that these specialized forces, they can increase. This ties back to my point a while ago about being more likely to stay in the organization. This increases their morale based on the power of the people within the specialized force. And again, that will also boost their reputation among the international front. People will look at them and they'll go, "Oh wow, these guys, they're pretty scary." So, this is better on our side because on op you don't have that. Okay, next. This ties back to both points. It will be good for the organization. Why? Because you have a morale boost, and you also have and you have less casualties on our side for general grunts. You'll have more casualties for specialized forces, but like again, that at least for the grunts that aren't like specifically trained for I know for specialized operations, they'll still you can still utilize them. So essentially, what is the point of this debate and why do we win? The point of this debate is to figure out which side is the best interest of the organization, right? Because this is an actor motion. So in that regard, you see that we win because we clearly know what's in the best interest of the motion. We clearly know that within the motion, it's important to make a statement rather than to prioritize longevity. Of course, we're not saying that longevity isn't prioritized, but again, as a terrorist organization, I want people to remember me. I want people to know what I've done because I want to show them that this is my message. And if I have to go down with my message, then so be it. At least those who strike me down will strengthen the resolve of my supporters. And with that, never been more proud to propose. Thank you.
Thank you for that speech, Deputy Prime Minister, and to continue upon the case of the opposition bench, calling upon the Deputy Leader of Opposition. Here, here.
Here. Okay. Let me set up my timer first. Wait. Let me. There. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. We have two strategies to win this debate. First is we have argued on sustainability, that where in our side, this terrorist organization could actually be more sustainable and could actually be more strategic in the long run. Second, in terms of how our impacts as a terrorist organization will be done, we are basically more proximate to the government without them having or without them targeting us through overwhelming retaliation. Because I feel like that is where government is already losing, right? So let's argue, or let's still win under metric, right? First, they argued on visibility. They told us that in terms of um in terms of resources, they get it in three ways. First is selling commodities through illegal actions, and basically they're also funded by the rich people or rich organization. But let's focus on how they are funded by rich organization, right? Or let's buy on the case, right, that they're gonna get funded by state institutions. Like that is already happening in the status quo, right? Now, Chair, see this in a perspective of those funders. Would you fund a terrorist organization that you know that's gonna be gone, or that is gonna be retaliated or decapitated by the government when they do this um coordinated attacks, right? Why is that? Why is that not the case? Because first, I feel like my PM was clear. When they are more visible, then people is ought to get them. Why is that true? Simple. I feel like government, because in the status quo, even the US, even the Philippines, even third world country invest heavily on their defense mechanism, right? They have a lot of partnership, they have a lot of mechanism to basically defend their state, right? There is a large portion or incentives for this country to basically defend themselves. That's why in the Philippines we have ROTC, we have reserve first personnel. In US there's larger, or there's bigger incentive for people to join the military. Why is that? Because the government is prepared in cases when there's complex coordinated attacks. And I feel like that's why government is already winning, already losing. Because first, they fail to consider that, oh, you are attacking the government, not someone's enemy. You're attacking an entire ideology. You're attacking an entire state, which every institution in society is trying to defend, right? Why is that? Why is that? Why? So what is the impact in that case, right? Simple. When investors or when those people who funds you don't find your strategy as stable or find it is more riskier, then no one will ought to support you. They would rather support organization that basically thus the war of attrition, wherein they win one battle at a time, right? Wherein they are more stable, when basically the investor can trust them, that instead of obliterating an entire city and basically get arrested afterhand, they would rather invest to those organizations that would cause first instability, second infiltration, indoctrination, and basically the entire goal of controlling an entire ideology by pushing their own in the government, right? Now, but still, let's remember what the motion is. This house would motion as a terrorist organization as well. But this is an actor policy, right? I feel like by principle, yes, an attack to be more visible is good. But I feel like even in that kind of metric, even if we consider that their priority is to be more visible, I think through war of attrition, when you continually infiltrate the government, when you have the perseverance to basically plant spies in the government, to infiltrate protests through indoctrination, it is basically more sustainable for you as a terrorist organization, because then again you can push your fight without the government retaliating towards you. You can
Why?
still be visible without the government attacking you. But before I go into my constructives, yes, POI.
How is organization infiltration exclusive to the opposition?
Because we do not attack aggressively. When you attack aggressively, you create more visibility. People is out to get you. Because again, there's a lot of cases in that, like the 9/11, wherein they literally determined who the attacker is because of the major attack that they did, right? So I feel like that is the case on why we are certainly winning, right? When people knows you, when you do an entire grand thing, then people is out to get you. But if you do the war of attrition slower, there is a lot of bureaucratic or basic bureaucratic limitations that the government can't do to you, right? Because if you join protests, because if you infiltrate through spies, they cannot prosecute you just for the sake of like, oh, I think you're a terrorist. That's basically against several legal implications in the status quo, right? There's the Geneva Convention, there's the UN Declaration of Human Rights. Basically, you can hide through this bureaucracy and internally dismantle government. That's what we're pushing you, right? And that instead of having the coordinated attack where people is not going to trust you, wherein you just create visibility without long-term sustainability, what happened is that you destroy, you kill without having any impacts, right? So by principle, your case here, the government's case here already falls, right? Because they just kill people just to push their ideology that won't even be pushed by the people. People is going to hate you for killing their family in the military. People is going to hate you for destroying their businesses. But in our case, when there is small infiltration in the government, when there is war of attrition, people is actually going to believe in you that, oh, your ideology is actually better. I'm going to up on that, right? But in your world, people is scared. People is basically intimidated to basically join you because your goal is to kill. Your goal is very barbaric, right? And I feel like that already is beyond human rationality. But share, let's ground this in a perspective of an average voter. If you're an average voter who wants to support terrorist organization, you want to opt, or you want to actually opt in into organization that is basically more sustainable. Now, so what have I told you in this debate, right? My impact here is simple. It's bet the war of attrition incentivizes you to first infiltrate, indoctrinate, and basically control the narrative instead of gaining momentum, or instead of gaining that retaliation that you don't want. Because again, government is more prepared than you as a terrorist organization. You're not a state. You are just funded by the state. But again, in our world, at least in the war of attrition, you are more prepared, you are more strategic, and you are more proximate to winning. And for all those reasons and all, it's clear. It's an opposition win.
Thank you for that speech, Deputy Leader of Opposition. And to conclude the constructive speeches of the government bench, calling upon the government whip, you're here.
You here. So, hi guys, my name is Vic. I'll take POIs through your voice. Pronounce he, him. Would it be okay for the chair if I would fix my notes for like just a minute?
Oh, yes, take your time.
Okay, cool. Okay, starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Oh, wait, hold on. Sorry. Ano yung ano? Give me 1 sec. Sorry.
Hello, sorry to interrupt. Would it be
Yeah,
possible
sorry.
to ask for a favor? Well, I'm one of the panelists, and I was hoping if I could have a few, just like 2 minutes. I have to change devices kasi. Sorry.
Oh, yeah, sure. No worries, no worries.
All right.
Oh, also, I think Gov is changing their reply from DPM to PM. Would that be okay for the chair?
Um, Wait. Since Equity
Yeah,
Dose
so
is here, is that okay? I mean, I'd allow it, but I don't know if the rules allow that.
Yes, it's okay.
Okay.
okay, cool. Thanks.
Hello? Am I audible? I am back.
Yes, okay. Government web.
Okay, so reintroducing myself. Hi, my name is Vic. My pronouns are he, him. I'll take POIs through voice. Okay, so starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. ISIS survives because they are complex and because they are sustainable, and that only happens more often than not because you take the time and consideration to build how your organization manifests. And more often than not, these terrorist organizations do not just live in a bubble and that they were just created simply for the purpose of violence, but because they have an ideology so radical that they must protect it and they must be more considerate insofar as how they should operate their organization. 4 points that I want to make very clear in my speech, right? On talking about how the organization operates best, not just for the people themselves or the members, but for the preservation of its ideology. One, on efficiency versus survival. Okay, we can take opposition's best case by saying that, oh, okay, it's actually the organization is going to survive more often than not when we do war of attrition because we are more consider we take our time, we show ourselves to the people more often than not. But we have to consider that the nuance of this motion talks about priorities, right? So opposition can talk about exclusivity by saying that, oh, we're actually going to be we're more likely to survive, and that's going to be a exclusive metric on their side because of war of attrition. But we have to consider the fact that on government side you still get war of attrition. It just so happens that we're more often than not going to prioritize or focus on complex coordinated attacks. That probably looks like creating complex coordinated attacks on governments, right? Before creating that before creating war of attrition, right? So if government is going to say that, oh, we're more likely to infiltrate and control the narratives of governments through war of attrition, we think that the priority first should focus on complex coordinated attacks in order for them to work. What am I trying to prove here? I'm trying to prove here that war of attrition is that complex coordinated attacks are a prerequisite in order for their case to actually manifest and for their case to be more efficient, right? So the reason why we're talking about efficiency in our case is because it is also proximate towards their survival, right? By becoming more efficient, you are more likely to survive as an organization, right? So secondly, then how we achieve morale more often than not, because you get this on PM, right? By saying that when you focus on like the top of the line members on this organization, by saying that, oh, okay, we're going to focus on strategy. We're gonna focus on complex ways of attacking the enemy, right? Because of how we are also an organization, right? The fact that you are an organization assumes that you have equally complex narratives, that it assumes that you have equally complex reasons on how or complex reasons on how you should attack this a situation, right? So you can't always just do war of attrition more often than not, because that essentially creates a moral narrative wherein you are just going in willy-nilly, right? In order for you to probably sustain an idea. But this doesn't work on opposition because you no longer have a sense of morale from the people when more people are going to die on their side. This is what you get on from DPM when they tell you that when these people are less specialized, when they have less resources to use and utilize effectively, right? Then that means these people are more likely to die. And when more people are more likely to die, then this creates a narrative that I'm not going to join this organization anymore because I am at a higher risk of dying, right? So I'm not just going to opt into as like a grunt, right? I'm not going to opt into this organization simply because I'm more likely to die. But when we focus on high coordinate attacks, I'm more likely to preserve myself on the long run. And by extension, I'm more likely to preserve the organization's survival, right? Thirdly, then, on how specialized an organization is truly manifested in an organization, because not only do you get higher morale for the people on the ground and for higher officers, but you also reinforce the fact that this organization is an organization, right? Because we have to understand that these terrorist organizations don't just manifest out of thin air, that I told you in the intro, but these are also people that radically operate on ideology. This looks like what PM told you, that these Islamic organizations are operating against capitalist or Western ideologies, and they believe in that so much that it becomes a radical that it becomes something that will manifest even if the priority, or even if complex coordinated attacks are going to be more risky, right? This looks like the ideology wanting to preserve itself um, through high scale attacks, and we think that's going to be more important because when you get more attention at the end of the day, and therefore you're more likely to spread that message, and you're more likely to get that kind of scale that opposition is trying to posit to you. Then, but fourthly, right, on results and attention, right now we're going to be talking about scale, right? How is it that on government side you achieve the same amount of attention, or you achieve the same amount of results on on opposition side, that when they tell you that attention is actually really bad for the organization, we flip that narrative by saying to you that attention is actually really good, because you can't have an ideology preserve itself if people don't know about it, right? So it's really ineffective for opposition to tell you that, oh, okay, we're going to take it low and slow, because the ideology must need to manifest not just within its own bubble, but also within other bubbles, in order for other people to understand that their ideology makes sense and that they have reason to exist, right? So when you create that kind of attention, when you put precedence on complex coordinated attacks before doing war of attrition, then you're more likely to get people's attention, let them look at you, and then you can sustain yourself on the long run through war of attrition. And then we have an organization that not only reinforces itself, not only builds on itself, but also sustains itself, and is more often than not going to be effective at the end of the day. What do I prove to you in my speech, right? I prove to you that not only is it going to be more effective for these organizations to utilize its resources, insofar it's going to be utilitarian, right? This looks like it's going to make the most amount of benefit with the least amount of casualties. But secondly, then it also creates a prerequisite requirement for the entirety of opposition's case to even manifest, by saying that by you focusing on complex coordinated attacks, you get all of the benefits that opposition is trying to posit, right? By saying that, oh, they're going to be more prepared and they're going to be more approximate in winning, right? Because you are more complex and because you consider more strategies, obviously you're going to be more prepared. Obviously, you're going to be more approximate in winning. And even if you don't win, at least you are still in an organization that reinforces itself, and that it is more often than not going to be a lot harder to be extracted from external powers, because you are so powerful. I don't think that external powers are easily going to extract you. For these reasons and more, proud to propose. Thanks.
Thank you for that speech, Government Whip, and to conclude the constructed speeches of the opposition bench, calling upon the opposition whip here.
Hello. Am I audible for you guys?
Yes, you are.
Okay. Allow me to set up my timer for a bit. Hold on. Okay. Hi, I'm Alex. I'm going to be your whip. Pronouns he, him, POI preferences, through voice chat brainstorm. So I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Panel, here's my job. Basically tell you what we said, what they said, and ultimately why we win this entire debate. Firstly, some summaries though. We have two main arguments. Argument 1, war of contrition over complex coordinated attacks is better in the long run, but then secondly, survival matters a lot. But then firstly, more drama, more explosions and killings mean more attention. The attention in this case, it is a spotlight, but a spotlight, remember, is for everyone. Spotlight for the government and intelligence agencies. Because the moment you pull off a massive coordinated attack, congratulations, you just got their crosshairs on you. And you can bet your ass their shots are way better than yours, and likely intervention by international bodies as well. And here's the strategic problem. Here's the strategic problem Gov never solved. Terrorist organizations cannot outgun governments on their own. Governments have intelligence agencies, armies that are funded by the tax of the population, and mutual defense treaties. When you attack them directly at scale, the response doesn't come back equal. It comes back tenfold. Your village cannot sustain a tank. Take the September 11 attacks as an example. Yes, it was a massive coordinated attack. Yes, it shocked the world. What happened next? Years of global counterterrorism operations and eventually the elimination of Osama bin Laden. But Gov keeps on saying that remembrance is important. Their job is to make up to make it big and then bounce. But what's the use if you fail? Sure, you're remembered. There'd be a Wikipedia page, but people will remember you as a clown. 9/11 again, for example. People clown on Bin Laden's hiding place. People clown on their failures. Coordinated attacks also require loyal men. This is how it affects you internally. They require loyal men to risk their lives. And when those men die or get captured, the org loses trained operatives and exposes structural weaknesses. Who's there to replace them? Their 5-year-old kids or a random dude that needs time to train? Time you won't have when there's a ticking clock on top of your heads because you threw the first punch. Even if they survive the capture, interrogation becomes a massive liability. Intelligence agencies don't just ask nicely, they apply pressure. They skin them, they torture them, they try to threaten their families. And who's to say that they won't break? And suddenly those loyal men become sources of information. That's what you risk when you do coordinated attacks, because you need people on the ground. You need boots on the ground. It's the strategic equivalent of announcing, "Hello, everyone, please investigate us immediately." Yeah, sure, brilliant plan, government. When you take the time instead of rushing into spectacle, you gain something government completely ignores: infiltration opportunities, espionage. Taking time means the organization can enter multiple sectors quietly trafficking arms, financial networks, human trafficking. These networks generate funding and also create sympathizers with economic incentives to protect the organization. It also opens political doors, okay? Doors for lobbyists and companies and businesses who back you. But then this argument is necessary because the survival comes first. But then second, because survival comes first. They cannot achieve ideological or political goals if your organization collapses after one dramatic attack. But then survival, our second argument, survival itself. If the organization survives long enough, it gains opportunities that spectacular attacks destroy. With time and influence, organizations can begin interacting with global superpowers and geopolitical interests. Look at parts of Africa or the Middle East. Armed groups and global superpowers sometimes become participants in proxy conflicts where external powers support them in exchange for access to resources or influence. And at the end of the day, it's way better for them to deal with us than them to deal with our opponents, or them not there at all, left on our own. Again, we cannot outgun a government. But what are the effects with and without? Gov says that the best interest is for us as a terrorist organization is to make a statement then bounce. I tell you that it is not. It is our ideals. Terrorist organizations, need I remind you, are inherently extremists. They care not about what people who are brainwashed in their perception think. They care about their beliefs. Bouncing won't give us that. We need ideals to extend beyond us, possibly beyond our death of or beyond the death of its founding members. That's the ultimate goal. Get people to our cause and dismantle the government from within. But before I continue with why we win, any POIs? Going once, going twice, no engagement. Two access then panel. Visibility versus survival versus resource hungry, and resource hungry versus sustained use is even more resource hungry. Why is this clash important? Because it's about the fate and survival of your organization, your ideal as a whole, physically and, well, I guess spiritually, if you consider spiritually, because some terrorist organizations are also religious based. Why do we win this clash then? What does visibility and results serve when you are outgunned, again, outmanned, outcapitaled, and 6 feet underground with your men and women suffering because of your hubris and your ego? That is not remembrance. That is not reverence. You are being clowned. You're going to turn into a meme. You're going to be a GIF in Instagram when people talk about Charlie Kirk. They say remembrance is important, but what's the use if you fail? Sure, you're remembered again. There'll be a Wikipedia page about you, but people will remember you as a clown. They say in an international perspective, getting people scared is way better. I tell you, it's not. It's when people sympathize. But even if it is to scare them, I will bite the bullet and answer and solve their problem for them. There's little in this world as terrifying as a group who poses a threat to your way of life. They have their safety, at least the international community has their safety behind borders. But once these organizations' ideals spread, borders won't matter. Everyone is at risk. Take a look at ISIS when they infiltrated the Philippines through Marawi. Predictability of ISIS apparently and stagnation led to Bin Laden's death. No, it was because of 9/11 itself. The US government government retaliated because they won't take belt to ass against a piss poor terror group when their defense budget is higher than a small country's GDP. And it doesn't matter if Whip tries to save their case and switch up from the perception from perception and then to ideological preservation. Your case is too far gone for a U-turn that cannot be credited, panel. But then resource hungry versus sustaining it is even more resource hungry. It is expensive, sure. Gov concedes that, but argues a sustained case is more resource hungry. We also concede, but look, with time, your organization expands. Lobbyists, powerful men, companies can back you, even if you don't. Even if they don't, at the end of the day, in the underground illegal world, it still grows. So what's the negative of a sustained resource demands when it is more efficient because you are richer, and that is time.
Thank you for the speech, Opposition Whip, and to conclude the opposition case as a whole, calling upon the opposition reply here.
Here. Okay. Then let me prepare my timer first. Okay. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. There's two issues in this debate, but first let's focus on the issue that was presented to us by government. Their focus here is visibility. Invisibility through complex kernel attack, we gain visibility. I feel like we have already banked on that, right? Again and again. From my PM told you that we have an alternative. Through war of attrition, you get visibility, but through this, but it will be less, but at least there is adaptation. Because first, we are in this current world, right? We have to basically focus. We have to also take into account structures. We have to take into account sustainability. What government has been focusing to you in this debate is basically a narrative imposition that complex attack is better than in their principle. Then again and again, my PM told you that when you have survival, when you have proper adaptation, it is more sustainable, thus it can sustain your movement and it can sustain your visibility. Again, this is not a narrative motion, this is a policy motion. We're talking about what the terrorist organization is better off in terms of implementing this policy, right? We're talking about resources, we're talking about sustainability, and that is something that we have been pushing to you while government is focusing on the fact that, complex coordinated attack is something that is visible. Then again, war of attrition is also visible, and I feel like my PM was clear on that, right? Now, second, they told us that, it is about the principle of this actor. As a terrorist organization, you want visibility, and that through the constant attack, you're basically gain more traction, and your people are more specialized. What have I told you in this debate, right? I feel like, yes, we got my PM, my LO mentioned to you that, there is still a principled aspect, or there's still visibility through war of attrition. But what have I told you? There's basically the structures in a society could actually help you better. You could actually adjust to the structure. I told you that government are strong. At the end of the day, you're just a terrorist organization. Government is richer. Government is more prepared. Government is more trusted. As a terrorist organization, you have to take out of two things. Again, you're weak. Your economy might be smaller to the GDP to the poorest country. But then again, in our case, at least in that world, at least in this structure, the war of attrition is still better. You can still win you can still push your ideas in our world with the same visibility and with the same movement, right? Because I feel like, again, our sustainability case still stands because this house as an actor would motion. We're talking about what is more sustainable for the actor to act on the present. We're not talking about narrative, but then again, even in narrative, I think that war of attrition still makes you visible, but in a sense, it is more sustainable, and this is basically better for your organization. I feel like government tries to salvage their case, right? That public relation, or basically the public perception, is still better. When people sees you, when people can actually know that you are fighting for something, then they would opt to, right? But I feel like that is the same to our case. It is something that is mutually inclusive to both cases, right? But then again, in our case, state funding, or basically rich people funding you, or your illegal action is more susceptible, or it is more sustainable for you to gather more resources. It's not something that, you gather resources now and you bomb an entire building and that's basically it. No, in our case, you gather resources, people trust you, you act on your principle, but in our world, you are more sustainable and your action is more visible. Again, we are rational human. As an average voter, we understand that if your terrorist organization is smarter, is more rational, you are up to trust that. And I feel like with that chair, in terms of sustainability, in terms of visibility, we still win this case. And that's why opposition deserves your vote. And for all those reasons and all, it is an up win. See you in semis.
Thank you for the speech, opposition reply, and to conclude the case of government as a whole and this debate as a whole, calling upon the government reply here.
Hi again. I'll be starting my speech in my first word. Protest never works if you just beat up few people every day. It works if you take over a park, beat everyone up there, and say F the government and we are here for change. Panel, this debate is not about how we should attack, how terrorist organizations should attack every time, but what does the terrorist organization want for them and for their goals to actually exist in the status quo? In this debate, the opposition is pushing a lot of benefits and harms that is falsely said that is exclusive to us or exclusive to them anyways. Killing this these are the examples: killing families of supporters, which creates more hate to them. That can also exist to them and much more harmful, because once you kill the supporter, because at the very least us are coordinated, so we are fighting on the enemy's ground. Them, they can fight on their territory's ground, because that is where their enemies at, so it much more rather exists to their side. Infiltration on organizations is just not really a case for them. And sustainability for funders, which also exists on our side, because at least on our sides, where rich organizations wants to kill off their enemies, they think that their enemies also wants to kill them off. So which means that they are also urgent for change, or also urgent for immediate results. So if the organization thinks that you are not going to be sustained, that you are not going to create immediate results, then they're still going to opt out to you. It goes same way for the opposition. And bouncing and retreating, is most likely more much happening to them, because once you do war of attrition, you most likely less take risk. So which means that once risk happens, you would most likely retreat, thus fail to do what you actually want to do in the first place. The opposition has been giving a lot of unclear arguments and gives you benefit and harms that exists for both sides. But even then, I would still try to understand this debate for you for your clarity, panel. When attacks become small, it gives chance for the people and for your enemies to build upon you and surprise you for a bigger attack that you cannot handle. But once you attack them first, and retreat, so that you not only gives them a bigger shock, but uh, but but also gives you more time to actually create another attack, or to preserve your rights, or to preserve yourself as a terrorist organization. The opposition is also pushing our worst case, where once we fail, we're going to be in jeopardy. But we need to understand that these coordinated attacks are complex, are well structured. So this means that we consider everything, that we do not want failure. So we see what we are capable to do and what resources we have. So this means that failure is not really a big option for this. But even if we become very charitable and accept this, that yes, we are going to lose, and yes, their people are going to be captured, you need to understand that radical that terrorist people are radical believers. They believe that their lives is less important than their beliefs. So why would they say what is happening to my organization if they think that these beliefs of this organization is bigger than them? Like same way as like a military people that think that protecting their country is much bigger than themselves. And with that, I am proud to propose. Uh,
Thank you for the speech and thank you for the debate as a whole. You guys may now cross the house. How will the judges like convene and like get results?